Hi,
Hi,
Lucy.
Amrita.
um, so I guess I'll begin with an acknowledgement of country. For those that are tuning in from the UK that might not have heard this before, we acknowledge the traditional owners whose land that we stand on when we begin talking in public. And we do this because our words have meaning and power. And we do this to acknowledge history and past. So me and Lucy are both tuning in to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And yes, to acknowledge that the internet is a physical place and it runs through many networks in the deep sea and also across many territories to reach you in your home. So yes, we'd like to acknowledge elders past and present. And yeah, it's a nice way to begin a conversation. So what do you have for breakfast, Lucy?
Oh, yes, it's a really good question, actually. I am a toast and coffee person. Quite often I have to say I have with my toast a boiled egg and I have Vegemite on the toast. It's like a child, actually. I cut it into the little fingers and, do the dipping. But yeah, I find the addition of the Vegemite a nice salty touch. What about you? Have you had breakfast yet?
No, I can't eat too early. I have to do a little bit before I can have breakfast, but usually I'll have coffee and toast and a boiled egg or yogurt and a boiled egg, except I won't have Vegemite on it because I can't stand Vegemite, but I'll have Promite. So similar, but just a little bit.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's quite similar. Promite's good. Promite.
It's like more sweet.
Yeah. So, this is very uncertain times, obviously, and here in Melbourne, we've just starting to come out of a really long lockdown period of, I think it was 112 days with a curfew and working from home and a lot of restrictions. So it does create quite a sense of uncertainty. So what do you think? Along with that, though, in uncertainty, there are some pleasures or some positive things to be found. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's funny. I think that it's almost like easing into the uncertainty allows for surprise. And that's it's like when you can actually be in what you're being, then you're able to find the joy in the surprise or the uncertainty. But I think that's rare. And I think that's the ability to be surprised and the ability to go into a situation with a certain amount of nimbleness is maybe what I want in things going forward. But it was a particular type of uncertainty this time. And it was, I guess, to say, what are the things that I found from it, or what are the joys that I found from it? It's still, I feel like with this time in particular, the kind of uncertainty of it, the joys might be in retrospect. But I think the ability to continually be surprised and to have a bit of kind of interiority. I think that was maybe one of the pleasures of this uncertain time, even though I know that both of us have been trying to get through things to the best of our ability and probably working still quite a lot. What about you? Was there pleasure in the uncertainty?
Yes, I think there was. Well, I feel as artists we're actually often floating in a state of uncertainty, or uncertainty is very important to our work, or to me, it's very important to have a fluidity about how you're seeing things. So in some ways, it felt quite natural. And I guess, I always struggle with that as an artist, wanting to lock things down, but also wanting to maintain a sense of doubt, a sense of exploration. So, so it felt fairly normal in a way, but I think the pleasure, the pleasure was the sort of, I guess, quietening down, the kind of just allowing more time for things that normally, you just brush past and rush over. So yeah, that's been nice during this time. Yeah.
Totally. I wonder, like, with the rapid pace that a lot of us were at before, do you feel like because I know, like, I felt like I was doing a lot of things always, and it was at this really kind of like with a momentum. And I know that there was a lot of people that felt that way too. And I'm sure that, with the amount of work that you were touring last year, do you have like a worry, or do you feel like your pace will be different going forward after this time?
I'm hoping that it will be different, actually. I'm really hoping that I can hang on to a little bit of the kind of, I guess, although I really, really enjoy traveling, and we just have been traveling and touring quite an insane amount over the last couple of years, which is, has always been very important to me. But just this being able to be in one place and connect with people here more deeply than I have been able to for a while, even though it's mostly on Zoom. I think that's been something that I really do want to retain. And I think we will really hang on to this idea of the centre of ourselves, and perhaps saying no to things that take us too far away from that. I guess it's really just about readdressing what is the balance, what's important to us, and what actually it's really fundamental. I think it's really, what do we want from life, and who do we want to be?
Yeah. And where, like, and I feel like there was, there was such a, like, with the internet, I feel like we're able to be in so many places. And so it allows for this kind of global network in a way. But then it's like being, like, there also was like such an awareness of like, well, what is it about here? Like, I choose to be here, or I am here, I have to be here. Like, so what is it that I'm working with in my real location, like my actual location, to land myself in the place that I am. And the same, like, I love the feeling of being away, because it, in some ways, it increases the awareness of where home is and my local context. But it was like how to work with what is here now, while still being kind of connected in this funny global avatar way. I guess
it is a big question for Australians, isn't it? Because we are so, it's, travel is really, we really want to feel this connection with the rest of the world, but to do that, it brings us into conflict with the environment, and in a really huge way, and there's a lot. I feel like I come from a generation who got to know the rest of the world through getting on a plane and flying internationally and, you know, meeting people live and doing classes and working and seeing performances a lot. And that was amazing. But there's also a certain guilt associated with that. And I think that's not something that, you know, is a way that we'll be able to, in Australia, get to know the rest of the world in the future. So, yeah, I think things are changing.
Well, maybe it's like, because I don't know, I feel like having, you know, like gotten into that being away, but now I guess being in this like thing of going like I enjoy, like in some ways I feel like I'm a child of the internet, and I enjoy that kind of I guess the communication that it facilitates, but it's also yeah, I guess like when the pandemic first happened, and it made me realize how much I really loved I really love coming to take class, because I really enjoy watching people in real time and having the chance to be watched by them too. And I lived around the corner from your studio, and I missed as well, like, you know, after class, how everybody goes into the room to have coffee together and to kind of, you know, in all these other ways that we're touching each other. And it was like, it really gave me such a recalcitrance to go like, okay, well, this is the new life and etc. Like, this is where we are, because I was like, it just felt like such a flat, like so much of it. I mean, I know that I came around on it, but so much of it felt like a flattening of apparatus. And like we had already like surrendered so much over to our phones. Like I refuse to, I've always loved the live, and I want the live. And I think I very much want it now. And I think everybody else does too. It's brought us back to like a live state, a truly live state.
Yes, and I think, you know, particularly as dancers, that sense of liveness is, you know, a huge percentage of our way of working. And it's almost like, you know, I've been finding not being able to be in the studio with dancers and to have that sort of energetic and spatial and visual feedback. I haven't been able to think very well about, you know, because all the time I'm thinking, it's so great to have some time to really think about my work and really, you know, give it the time that it needs in preparation for when we do come out and we can go into rehearsal. But I have found that my brain will only work in a certain way, and without that sort of environment with others and with that sort of empathetic communication between myself and the dancers and the other creatives, there's not much occurs to me, and it's been quite frustrating in that way. I think that you know, I think that's been the most frustrating thing for me about the whole time, is feeling like I've got time, but I'm not able to utilize it in a way because the tools are not there.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's just like thinking, maybe the act of thinking in dance is doing dancing, and the act of doing dancing is for the most part, even if you are making a solo, it is doing with others. Like, I mean, I remember you telling me this story once about how you know, you were making a solo, and I felt the same thing. And you get into the studio and you're like, what am I doing? Like, because you can feel everybody in your body as you're moving, and you kind of just have to be like, okay, well, how is it that I'm dancing now? And and trying to like piece it together. But it was only, I mean, I know from then, I know from my own experience when I was making a solo, like I would, the motivation to work, I mean, there was a lot to do in it, and I knew that I had this work to make, but the motivation as well in these short bits was when it was that I knew that somebody else was coming in to see me and to kind of to work with me, to give me that kind of interface and to give me that feedback. And yeah, it's like truly the thing of going like, you know, I think carnally we never want to be alone. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we want to be alone, but there's this like, yeah, there is the dance is like the communion of being with others. Even if the appearance is alone, it's always attuned to others. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess one of the other things that, you know, coming out of the pandemic obviously is this kind of sense of possibility of change, and this sense of that it's really time to fix certain huge injustices in the world, racial injustice, and you know, and climate change, and I kind of feel that that's a really big question for me in my work at the moment, and it's not because I've never been someone who was sort of politically active in my work. I've always been very interested in the art form and how the art form can affect you know, our perceptions of ourselves and our relation to our society. But in terms of more overt messages, it's never felt like a medium where I could address that. Although I think in the means of the production of the work and the people involved and the conditions and the behaviours, I think I can address it. But it's because this moment feels so urgent. It's been making me think: is that, you know, is this a time where I need to somehow find a way to figure out what how my connection to dance, or my way of working with dance, can more directly communicate on this level. And I was curious too how you, if that's changing the way you're thinking about working. I know you've been much more active, more vocal politically in your work, I think, anyway.
You know, I feel like in a lot of ways, I just want to acknowledge the fact that I feel like in a lot of ways you do the political work by committing to the act of dancing, of doing dancing. And I think obviously from my background, like I'm a Bundjalung woman from northern New South Wales, which is an Aboriginal woman of this country on my father's side, and also a Māori Ngāpuhi woman from northern New Zealand. And so there's this kind of like inherent like link and feeling of responsibility because of that First Nations background. And I realized that, and I feel like a lot of, I mean, I do contribute to advocacy, but sometimes I feel like, you know, that art and dance, because of its mode of production, because of its community values, because of its like its usefulness and its uselessness in this transmission between being able to facilitate conversations, that it becomes a political act. You know, art is threatening when it's produced under the right conditions because it cannot be controlled. And it's not to say that the art in and of itself needs to be political. It's to say that by contributing to this realm that in some ways can affect people, can give people the space to kind of to reflect on their experiences, that is a radical act. And I think that sometimes we can get confused with the notion of having to, having to say something political in the work or make it useful, which fundamentally I kind of, disagree. I think the privileging of the usefulness of dance to kind of act towards advocacy and this kind of utility over a critical or over a criticality, which is something that art provides. And, more and more I'm thinking like, by doing something, by giving my attention to something wholeheartedly, which is a project of loving dance, it involves many people, it involves critical reflection, it involves working together, and that togetherness provides an ideology by which to have a political kind of stance on something, because it engages in these really incredible conversations that happen in the process of it, which is what you were talking about, like how it is that you're treating your dancers, who it is that you're employing. I think that confinement at this time led a lot of people to finally catching the thought that human beings shouldn't be confined or put in cages. And I think it also has been Instagram and the internet has become this kind of pedagogical tool rather than the matrix of like DIY propaganda. And so it then is like our attention is so dispersed on the kind of moral theatre and chaos of things that I think if we are able to focus and do things in a way whereby we are giving it our attention and our love and our care, then that becomes in some ways, maybe in a gentler way, a really radical act of caring and cultivating community in the best way that we can.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I think I do think, when I think about the way I think about dance now to say 20 years ago when or more when I first started making dance, or more, much more actually. I do think about the sort of the politics of the creation of the material, and it sort of has affected my my choreographic structures in that I guess I've been working on this idea of trying to get these kind of almost little societies happening, a sort of self-generating societies happening in the choreography where the actions or the movements or the kind of input into the choreography has certain effects on others in the choreography, and that it's sort of it's a kind of shared choreographic development or language that that doesn't really have an author in the end. And although I know that I'm still the author because I'm the one that's setting this in motion, but I've come to think, just through I don't know, over a long period of time, I think it's important to have people that will set things in motion, but then, especially I think becoming a more experienced or older artist, that is something that you can offer, but that then to be able to hand that over and to hand that on is really vital. And so I see that kind of happening within the structures of my work, of trying to create a place where something can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
true in your work.
Yeah. Oh, good. Oh, good. Reading. Fantastic.
And in your community that you've cultivated around you,
Oh, great. That's good news. So
I was just going to say on that point though, is that like, I forget who said this, but there was this thing that I read, and it's like always affected me, and that it's like that to be a dancer or like a performer in today's world is to insist on the social function of, you know, these spaces, a theatre, a public site, or wherever it is that the act happens as a gathering place, and to acknowledge that, you know, that the dancer or the performer's labor is inseparable from the conditions of the world that it's being made in, you know, that we are never really, I mean, we create a kind of like, maybe like a little, like a protective force or something to be in it, you know, subconsciously, consciously, but all of that is never separate from what is happening around us. And it's so, can sometimes be so immediate on the floor of doing. Yeah.
I think that's something that, you know, we've really learned in the last, I don't know how many years, is that it's not just a world that exists in the dark. Although, you know, that's a lovely thing about some theatre, but it's never just that.
No.
So are you, what's happening with you at the moment? Are you doing, what's happening for the rest of the day, Amrita?
Rest of the day. Today I'm doing dancing at Temperance Hall, which is I mean, I know you know Temperance Hall, Lucy, but is a hall on the south side of Naarm, Melbourne, and I'm meeting up with a group of dancers to share practice, kind of led by Luke George. And then after this, I have another Zoom with some other artists, because they're coming up with like a speculative contract of agreement of how we would like to engage with institutions within an email, and what that might look like in a template to share. So that is my day. How about you, Lucy?
That's a great day. Yeah, well, it's really nice, isn't it? But because we are being able to start being in a room with other people. This week I'm at a venue called the Meat Market, and it's a huge space, and I'm beginning work on a new piece called Pendulum with a composer called Matthias Jack Arnott, and we're making a work with 58 pendulums that they're made from temple bowls, and inside they have a speaker and a little tapper to hit the bowl, and a light. And we're making a kind of installation work with Matthias, obviously, making the music, and the music responds to the swing of the pendulum. So when it hits the bottom, it can make a certain sound, or when it's slowing down. And we're working with, next week we'll be working with dancers, and the pendulums also respond to the touch of the dancers, and the dancers will be activating them. So, and this week it's just really about all that really nerdy kind of setting up the pendulums, getting them all working, which obviously I'm not doing, but some really amazing other people are doing. And it's just, yeah, it's really incredible. So
how many pendulums is there?
Oh, 58.
How many
at the moment? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 58. Yeah.
It's
it's a massive project, and I've never done anything like this before, so there's uncertainty, but there's also a lot of joy. Mm-hmm. Well, we should get on with our days and have some more coffee and get out there.
Yeah. Thank you for a good chat. And I'll see you soon.
It's great to talk to you, Amrita. We don't get to talk enough.
Yeah, always good to talk to you, Lucy. Okay, cool. See you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.